Hey everyone, welcome back to GNOME's Linux News. We are kicking things off today with the biggest release in the Linux world this week. Ubuntu 26.04 LTS has officially dropped, and it is a landmark release. As reported by OMG Ubuntu and confirmed by Fornix, Ubuntu 26.04 LTS, codenamed Resolute Raccoon, is the very first long-term support release in Ubuntu's entire history to ship without an Xorg desktop session. That's right. Canonical has gone all in on Wayland, and there is no going back. Under the hood, you're running on the Linux 7.0 kernel paired with GNOME 50, the latest and greatest from the GNOME project. The release also swaps in a brand new video player and a refreshed system monitor application. For package management fans, Deb support has made its way into the App Center as well. Now, on the support side, you're looking at a solid 5 years of standard updates. And if you opt into Ubuntu Pro, you get an additional 5 years of security coverage, so 10 years total. Fornix also noted that the server edition of 26.04 is now automatically installing HWE and OEM kernel packages out of the box, which is a really welcome quality of life improvement for sysadmins. Whether you're a desktop user or running servers, this is a big deal. Ubuntu 26.04 is available for download right now across all the main Ubuntu flavors. Alright, now let's talk about one of the most satisfying kernel stories in recent memory. According to Fornix, Linus Torvalds has officially merged a massive cleanup pull request for Linux 7.1 that removes a staggering 138,000 lines of code. What got axed? The entire ISDN subsystem. That's Integrated Services Digital Network for those of you who weren't around in the dial-up era, along with a whole pile of old network drivers, mostly from the PCMCIA era. Think network cards from the late 90s and early 2000s. Now here's the really interesting reason this cleanup happened when it did. Fornix explains that a major driver for this removal was the surge of AI and LLM-generated bug reports flooding in against this ancient and used code. Kernel maintainers were getting hammered with automatically generated issues for drivers that almost certainly have 0 active users left in the wild. Rather than keep babysitting code nobody runs, the decision was made to just rip it out entirely. And in a separate but related story, also reported by Fornix, Linux 7.1 is also removing old input hardware drivers, including, and I love this, bus mouse support. Yes, the kind of mouse that plugged into an ISA bus card. If you're still rocking one of those, I genuinely respect the commitment, but the kernel is moving on. This is a healthy kernel, leaner, cleaner, and less vulnerable to AI-driven noise. Okay, this next story had the internet doing a double take, and honestly, same. As reported by its FOSS, Mozilla quietly integrated Brave's adblock engine into Firefox, and they did it without a single mention in the official release notes for Firefox 149.0. Nothing. Just shipped it. Now, for context, Brave's adblock engine is widely regarded as one of the most effective filtering engines out there. So from a pure performance standpoint, this is actually great news for Firefox users. Your ads are getting blocked more efficiently, and you didn't even have to do anything. But the way this was handled has raised some eyebrows in the community. Mozilla didn't announce it, didn't explain it, didn't credit it publicly in the changelog. It just appeared. Some folks are reading this as Mozilla recognizing that Brave has the better filtering tech and quietly borrowing it. Others are more philosophical about it and say, hey, open source is about building on each other's work. Whatever your take, the end result is that Firefox is now a better ad-blocking browser than it was last week, powered by technology from one of its biggest competitors. That's a wild sentence to say out loud, but here we are in 2026. Moving along. And this one speaks to a broader trend we're seeing across the entire open-source ecosystem. Fornix is reporting that the GNU Compiler Collection, better known as GCC, has officially established a working group tasked with studying and deciding on a formal policy around the use of AI and large language models in GCC development. The GCC Steering Committee created this group, and their job is to figure out exactly where AI fits and where it doesn't, in the context of contributing to one of the most foundational compilers in the open-source world. This comes at a really critical moment. We just talked about how AI-generated bug reports caused enough noise in the Linux kernel that entire subsystems got removed. The open-source community is clearly grappling with how to handle the flood of AI-assisted contributions and reports at scale. GCC is now being proactive about it rather than reactive, which is a smart move. We don't yet know what policies this working group will recommend, but the fact that it exists signals that major open-source projects are taking the AI question seriously and want to get ahead of it before it becomes a bigger problem. Here's a win for the open-source graphics world that deserves some attention. Phoronix is reporting that the open-source Nouveau driver for NVIDIA GPUs has achieved HDMI fixed-rate link support, which is a key feature of the HDMI 2.1 specification. This is a meaningful step forward for anyone running an NVIDIA card on Linux who wants to take advantage of higher bandwidth HDMI connections for things like high refresh rate displays or high-resolution output. Now here's what makes this story particularly interesting. Phoronix points out that the AMD open-source AMD GPU driver has actually struggled with HDMI 2.1 support because the HDMI forum has been actively blocking open-source implementations. So in a bit of an ironic twist, the Nouveau driver for NVIDIA hardware has cleared a hurdle that AMD's own official open-source driver is still fighting to get over. Open-source graphics on Linux continues to make real progress, and Nouveau in particular has had quite the glow-up over the past couple of years as NVIDIA has become more cooperative with the open driver ecosystem. Let's check in on how Linux 7.1 is actually performing, because Phoronix has been doing what they do best, running real-world benchmarks on the latest kernel code. With the Linux 7.1 merge window winding down ahead of the planned RC1 release this Sunday, Phoronix ran a range of tests across multiple systems, and the early results are looking good overall. The publication found a number of genuine performance improvements across different workloads, which is always great to see. However, and this is worth keeping an eye on, they also flagged a handful of possible regressions. Nothing catastrophic, but some areas where performance has dipped compared to Linux 7.0. That's pretty normal at this stage of kernel development, and regression fixes are exactly what the RC process is designed to catch and address. On the hardware improvement side, Phoronix also reported that Linux 7.1 is bringing a solid batch of improvements for Intel and AMD laptops specifically, new features and better hardware support for modern AMD Ryzen and Intel Core Ultra machines. And separately, the AMD SBI driver has been updated to prepare for the upcoming EPYC Venice processors based on the Zen 6 architecture. Linux 7.1 is shaping up to be a solid release all around. Let's wrap up today with a couple of Ubuntu ecosystem stories. First up, Launchpad is finally getting some design love. As OMG Ubuntu reports, Canonical UX designer Enzo Deng has announced that the team has begun a complete redesign of the series pages on Launchpad, starting with the Ubuntu 26.04 LTS series. For those who don't know, Launchpad is the development hub for Ubuntu. It's where bugs get tracked, packages get built, and developers collaborate. The site's homepage got a refresh back in 2024, but many of the pages that developers actually use day-to-day have been sitting unchanged for nearly a decade. This redesign is the beginning of a bigger modernization effort, and it's long overdue. And speaking of looking ahead, OMG Ubuntu also confirmed that Ubuntu 26.10 Stonking Stingray has an official target release date of October 15, 2026. The feature freeze for that cycle is set for August 10, 2026. As always with development schedules, those dates are tentative, but it's nice to know Canonical is already thinking about what comes after Resolute Raccoon. Alright everyone, that is a wrap for today's GNOME Linux news. If you found any of these stories as fascinating as I did, smash that like button and hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. I'll catch you in the next one. Take care.